Welcome to ZooParc de Beauval in France. This is not your average zoo. It's the only place in the country with giant pandas. It's home to some of Europe's rarest monkeys. And yes, the legendary mermaid. Of course, the truth is a little less Disney. It's actually manatees. In the next 15 minutes, I'll show you the animals and exhibits you absolutely can't miss, and why they're so special. We'll begin with the equatorial dome, arguably the most impressive part of the zoo. Here we are at the entrance. I came ridiculously early today, so before the crowds arrived, I got to be the very first person to walk inside. And why do I say this is the best exhibit in the entire zoo? Well, take a look at this giant glass bubble, nearly 100 meters across and 38 meters tall. Inside, there's almost a hectare of space packed with 200 animal species and tens of thousands of tropical plants. Basically, they just picked up the equator and dropped it into the middle of France. You don't see this in your average zoo. The temperature in here? Always a comfy 26 degrees Celsius. For the animals, it's the perfect climate. And for primates like me, even better. Tropical vibes without the sweaty mess. The way the tour is laid out is super fun too. You kind of walk the equator, starting in the Americas, then moving on to Africa, Southeast Asia. One loop feels like a mini world trip. Personally, I think South America steals the show with its lineup. And if you follow the spiral walkway upwards, you can get a bird's eye view of the whole tropical jungle-like scene. These gentle giants right here? West Indian manatees. So, why are they a must-see? First off, just look at them. Round bodies, smooth gray skin, drifting through the water so slowly it almost feels like time stops. And yet, there's this elegance to the way they move. Watching them is like watching a built-in meditation video. You can't help but feel calmer. And here's where it gets funny. Early sailors, after way too long at sea without seeing any women, apparently mistook these slow, chubby creatures for beautiful mermaids. Even Columbus himself wrote that the mermaids he saw weren't quite as pretty as expected. Talk about the world's first catfishing moment. But the real reason they're so special isn't just how they look, it's how rare they are. Fewer than 10 zoos in all of Europe keep manatees. Beauval happens to be one of them, which already makes this place unique. And honestly, you couldn't ignore them even if you tried. Their habitat is right at the entrance of the equatorial dome, filling up your whole view as soon as you walk in. Plus, you get multiple vantage points, from ground level and even from the second floor where you can watch them float up for a breath of air. Right next to the manatees lives another superstar, the giant otter. So why shouldn't you miss them? First of all, they're listed as endangered by the IUCN, which means they're extremely rare. Even in zoos, it's not often you get the chance to see them. Spotting them here at Beauval really is something special. Back in their homeland of Brazil, locals gave them a pretty epic nickname, Ariranja, which translates to water jaguar. With a name like that, you already know they're fast, powerful, and seriously skilled hunters. But for me, the real highlight of the dome has to be these guys, the red-shanked dukes. So, why shouldn't you miss them? Let's start with their looks, that delicate face, their calm and graceful demeanor, the mix of vibrant colors, and of course, those striking crimson legs. In fact, it's those red shanks that gave them their name. Honestly, it's hard not to look at them and think, this might just be the most beautiful monkey in the world. Now, I know saying that might upset Beauval's golden snub-nosed monkeys, so let's keep this video away from them. And it's not just about beauty, they're incredibly rare too. In all of Europe, only 2 zoos have red-shanked dukes. In the wild, things aren't much better. They're listed as endangered by the IUCN, with numbers uncertain, but definitely lower than anyone would want. So being able to see them here at Beauval really does feel like a privilege. Inside the dome, I also came across 4 different kinds of crocodilians. The most eye-catching one? A rare albino American alligator. Its body is completely snow white, with just a blush of pink around the eyes. And no, that's not makeup. It's simply the blood vessels showing through the skin. Then there's the Malayan gharial, with its long, unusual snout. It even goes by another quirky name, the false gharial. Why false? Well, it was discovered a few decades after the true gharial. Scientists at the time looked at it and thought, looks like a gharial, but not quite the same. So they slapped on the label, false. But here's the twist. Later research showed that they're actually close relatives, both in the same family. So really, there's nothing false about it at all, just a little naming mishap from back in the day. The equatorial dome is said to house around 200 species, and there are plenty of other fascinating residents here, like the adorable pygmy hippo, Rodriguez flying foxes hanging upside down from the ceiling, and then there's this giant snake with a strange rainbow sheen, probably a Boelen's python. But today, we'll have to stick to the highlights, otherwise we'd never make it out of here. And speaking of highlights, don't rush off just yet. As soon as you step outside the dome, another heavyweight star is waiting. The harpy eagle, one of the largest eagles in the world. Why is it a must-see? Well, just look at it from the front. Powerful, majestic, with a touch of the bizarre. But if you look at it from the side, let's just say the eagle doesn't seem too impressed with my photography skills. Leaving the tropical heat of the dome, we're now jumping halfway across the globe to another must-see area, the heights of China. As the name suggests, this part of the zoo is home to animals from China's high-altitude regions. And why is it such a big deal? Because this is the only place in all of France where you can see giant pandas. The habitat here is spacious, beautifully designed, maybe the best panda enclosures I've seen anywhere in Europe. What's more, I get the feeling the pandas here are livelier than in most other zoos. Maybe that's just because there are 4 of them. When some are napping, the others are usually up and about. So there's always something for visitors to enjoy. You've got the adult female Huan and the male Yuanzi, plus their twin daughters, Huan Lili and Yuan Dudu. They were born on August 2, 2021, which makes them 4 years old now. Normally, panda cubs born overseas are sent back to their homeland, China, once they're old enough to live independently. They usually go to the panda breeding base in Chengdu, where they can find a mate and hopefully help continue the species. But since their older brother, Yuanmeng, stayed at Beauval until almost 6 years old before moving back to Chengdu, maybe Huan Lili and Yuan Dudu will stick around here a bit longer too. Next stop, the home of Beauval's gorillas. So why is this spot unmissable? First of all, because of its charismatic leader, Asato, the silverback gorilla. He's 34 years old, but instead of slowing down, he's only grown more dignified and imposing. Asato isn't just the head of his troop, he's one of the true icons of the entire zoo. His features are quite distinctive, unlike any other silverback I've seen. In fact, he even reminds me a little of Bobby, the legendary gorilla from Berlin Zoo. Then there's the beautiful outdoor enclosure itself. Lush greenery, lots of layers and depth, all designed with Beauval's signature attention to detail. And here's the fun twist. It's not only home to gorillas. Sharing the space are their smaller neighbors, the common patas monkeys. They're quick, nimble, and so much smaller that it's easy to miss them if you're focused on the gorilla's commanding presence. Finally, make sure you check out the gorilla's indoor area. It's a massive greenhouse of about 2,000 square meters. In winter, it serves as their main home. But throughout the year, it also hosts a whole mix of other animals. You'll spot Hilaires side-necked turtles swimming in the pool, spectacled caimans basking on the shore, crested partridges and Victoria-crowned pigeons wandering freely, and even a mini croc, the dwarf crocodile. And down at the bottom of the pool, those flat UFO-like creatures, they're Xingu river rays, a species you often see in aquariums. So while this area may be labeled as the gorilla's domain, in reality, it's like a mini tropical menagerie, and definitely worth your time. Beauval Zoo actually started out as a bird park, so when it comes to bird exhibits, this place really knows how to shine. And their biggest masterpiece? The Great South American Aviary. So why is it a must-see? Because I've honestly never seen anything like it. Instead of walking along the ground, the visitor path is a network of elevated walkways, soaring several stories high. With the wind in your ears, the sound of birdsong and flowing water all around, and sweeping views on every side, it feels less like a zoo exhibit and more like stepping straight into an adventure. This aviary covers a full 2 hectares and is home to over 500 birds. They may not be flying completely free, but compared to traditional aviaries, this space feels like a whole new level. And it's not just birds. You'll also run into some surprising roommates, like black-headed spider monkeys, Colombian red howler, and white-faced saki monkeys. Both are native to South America, so it makes sense to see them here, blending right in with the bird life. My only problem? My lens was nowhere near long enough. Before coming, I had no idea this aviary would be so massive. Once inside, filming the birds felt almost like being out in the wild. I kept thinking, I should have brought a 600mm prime lens. Then reality hit me. I don't even own one. After exploring the South American aviary or the equatorial dome, if your timing is right, there's one more thing you absolutely can't miss. Beauval's most breathtaking show, Masters of the Air. Picture this. Hundreds of colorful raptors and other birds soaring freely in an open arena with no roof. One moment, they're circling high above. The next, they're swooping just inches over the audience, the rush of wings and feathers brushing past your ears. Combined with music and live commentary, it's more than just a show. It's a full-on, immersive experience. If Beauval Zoo itself is a visual feast, then Masters of the Air is without doubt the grand finale. Now let's jump over to the green zone, where we find Beauval's slice of Australia, and a few celebrity animals you definitely don't want to miss. First up, the Tasmanian devil. And honestly, half the reason you have to see them is the name. I mean, if an animal is literally called a devil, how could you possibly resist checking it out? Today, Tasmanian devils survive only on the island of Tasmania, and they're listed as endangered by the IUCN. In all of Europe, only a handful of zoos, 7 or 8 at most, keep them, and Beauval is one of the lucky few. Their enclosure here is surprisingly large and open, a worthy home for such a rare little creature. And then, of course, there are the koalas. Do I even need to explain why they're unmissable? As long as you can spot them in their favorite spot, everyone stops to look. Beauval gives you both indoor and outdoor viewing areas, so you can watch them from different angles. Sure, they spend most of their day dozing, but that sleepy, cuddly vibe is exactly what makes them so irresistible. But not all Australian animals here are so famous. Some are rare surprises you might never have heard of. One of them is the Goodfellow's tree kangaroo. Why are they worth your time? Well, because meeting a species you've never seen before is already pretty cool. At first glance, you might think, that just looks like a kangaroo. But take a closer look. The face is rounder, almost like it's stashing snacks in its cheeks. The claws are more curved, too, perfectly designed for climbing tree trunks. That's right, this is basically the tree-dwelling version of a kangaroo. What's interesting is that they don't actually live on mainland Australia at all. Their home is the tropical rainforests of New Guinea, where they share the forest with the famous Ragiana birds of paradise. In Europe, you can only find Goodfellow's tree kangaroos in fewer than a dozen zoos, and in France, just 2 places. The zoo at the Jardin des Plantes in Paris, and here at Beauval. Baby tree kangaroos spend about 10 months in their mother's pouch, and even after they graduate, they stick close to mom for another 2 to 3 months before becoming fully independent. So the little one I saw must have just moved out of the pouch suite, still getting used to the big wide world. Back in the orange zone, another extraordinary exhibit is waiting for us, the Hippopotamus Reserve. Honestly, this might just be the best hippo habitat I've ever visited. The landscaping is breathtaking. And those baobab trees? Can someone please tell me, are they real or just really convincing fakes? The whole area has been recreated as a lively wetland, with plenty of birds flying around just like they would in the wild back in Africa. The sound of water, the bird song, the lush greenery, it almost makes you forget you're still inside a zoo. Everything was perfect, except for one tiny detail. I didn't actually see any hippos. Finally, let's circle back to where our zoo journey began, right near the entrance. Hidden in plain sight, there's the bird tropical greenhouse that many visitors probably walk right past without even noticing. Inside, the space is divided between free-roaming birds and those in aviaries. As you wander through, you might spot Victoria crowned pigeons chasing each other along the path. An Asian glossy starling tries to take a quick bath in the water. A few crested partridges scurry about, looking busy with who knows what. Nearby, a pair of sunbitterns seem to be enjoying each other's company. In the central square, a shy little Java mouse deer makes a tentative attempt at socializing. But at the slightest disturbance, it darts back into hiding. By the water, a ruff paces back and forth, debating whether or not to take a swim, while a black-necked stilt is already waiting in the water. And perched quietly on a branch, a female great argus seems to be staring straight into my camera lens. This birdhouse feels like a pocket-sized rainforest, far more alive and vibrant than my camera could ever capture. Apart from being a little hot and humid, there's really nothing to complain about here. Among the caged birds, the biggest star has to be the rhinoceros hornbill, specifically the Javan subspecies. Hornbills are nothing short of a natural wonder. With their unique shape and striking features, I honestly find every species of hornbill completely irresistible. And don't confuse them with toucans from South America. Toucans may have big, colorful beaks, but hornbills have something extra. A helmet-like structure on top of the beak called a casque. The size and shape of the casque varies by species, and the rhinoceros hornbill is one of the most dramatic examples. In another enclosure, at least 3 species live together. I only spotted 3, but there could easily be more. There's the ever-popular two-toed sloth, the Azara's agouti, which is always busy stashing food, and the one that caught most of my attention, the Andean cock of the rock. It's a spectacular little bird from South America. Just outside the tropical greenhouse, you'll find another row of enclosures, this time home to birds of prey. The only problem? The mesh here is super fine, which makes life tough for photographers. My autofocus basically gave up on me, and I had to switch to manual focus just to get a halfway decent shot. Ever since I first picked up a camera, I've relied almost entirely on autofocus. So having to switch to manual focus this time really threw me off. But on the bright side, maybe that forced me to slow down and really look. The sharpness in their eyes, the sheer presence these raptors carry. It's enough to make anyone stop and admire them. So even if photographing them is a bit of a challenge, this corner is still very much worth a visit. Beauval isn't just about cool animals. It's about how the whole place feels. The habitats are natural, open, and full of character, and the experience is as much about beauty as it is about wildlife. So if you ask me why I call Beauval the most beautiful zoo in Europe, well, I think the answer is already right here in these scenes.